I remember talking to my mum when I was really in the throes of it. And she was like, what broke my heart was I had to drop you all off at daycare. And I would get pictures texted to me saying they took their first step. And she was like, I missed all of that. And I was working a minimum wage job and it was never worth it. But I had to do it. What I really want is women to have the freedom to do what they want to do. If I create anything, it has to speak to women on all levels so that hopefully I can give them some piece of advice that would help them be able to create that around their life and their desires.
Hello, welcome back to today's show. Today I'm here with my friend Natalie Ellis. Natalie needs no introduction, but is the founder of CEO Mama, the co-founder of Boss Babe, someone I have followed for a long time and highly respect, and also got to witness your whole journey into motherhood. And obviously you and I have now connected and are working together on CEO Mama. But I'm really excited to have this conversation because I think a lot of what inspired Motherload through the last year, and also, of course, CEO Mama, was this conversation you and I were having around how do ambitious women, especially women who are incredibly successful outwardly in terms of influence and revenue, income, how are we doing really, internally in our identities, in our relationships, and in relationship to our business? And I think you're one of the first people that I ever connected with that was really willing to tell the truth about how you were feeling. So thank you for being here today. I'm really excited for this.
I'm excited. I feel like it's been a long time coming. We have so many conversations that I'm like, wait, why are we not recording this and putting it out on a podcast?
Yes. Oh my gosh. Yeah, we'll talk about that too, because this whole world of connecting with women who are in a similar place in business, in a similar place in life, and all of a sudden you unlock this whole new level of conversation. You and I were on a call earlier today with one of the CEO Mama cohorts, and I had a moment of being like, these are the conversations that people need to hear. Like, this is what would have saved me from my life falling apart 3 years ago. This is what saved you from having all the questions you've had to ask about ambition in relationship to motherhood. So, these are the real talks that we should be having. So to jump in, I would love to hear, I know some of your backstory, but if you could share a little bit of your story of how ambition is like this thread that's been pulled through your life. And obviously you built Boss Babe around and for ambitious women. And then as you came into the relationship with Steven, decided you want to be a mother, did you have that inkling or even an understanding that it was going to shift, or were you thinking about that at all prior to becoming a mother?
I was not thinking about it at all prior to becoming a mum. So, I've always been an incredibly ambitious person. And all of that, I think for so many of us, stemmed from my childhood. And I grew up in, we had nothing. We grew up with very little. And there was a lot of turbulence at home where I grew up. It was quite a dysfunctional household. I actually moved out of my house when I was 13. And so from a very, very young age, I had this story that I needed to be ambitious. I needed to take care of myself. I started my first ever company when I was, about 13, 14, which was building websites for local businesses. And I always just had this sense of independence of I'm going to take care of myself. I'm going to, make enough money so that I have freedom to make choices. I have freedom to go and live where I want to live how I want to live, not have to struggle the way I've seen struggle. And so it's always been a thread. And I feel like I never really came for air, to be honest. It was just one business after the next, the next accolade until the next. There was always something. There was always a milestone, always a goal, always some bigger ambition. And when me and Steven were thinking about starting a family, the conversation around my ambition changing just wasn't there because it had never entered my mind that it would change things. I do now, but I didn't have a lot of friends who had babies and were, similarly as ambitious. I wasn't seeing a lot of conversation online about it. I think, we just put ourselves in these bubbles online. And so I was in bubbles of people like me who we were in our 20s. We had no kids, very few responsibilities, growing businesses. And that's the bubble I was in. So I wasn't seeing those conversations happen. And so to me, I just thought, well, yeah, I'm going to do it all, right? I'm just going to keep going as I am, and I'm going to have a family, and I'm going to do all the things just like I've seen other people doing on covers of magazines and things like that. So I had that in my mind already. What I did know is I was going to take a maternity leave. I was committed to 3 months, which, you know, now I realize, wow, we're really failing mothers in the US because that is not enough time. We were just talking about this before the call at Boss Babe. I'm really grateful that we've been able to extend that, and it's still not where I'd like it to be. You know, eventually I would love it to be a year if we could ever get there. That would be such a huge goal for me as a company. But 3 months, especially with your first baby, but I'm sure with your second, third, it's still, you know, just as much sleep deprivation, if not more chaos than before. But for me as a new mom, I felt like I was in shock. I was in absolute shock. You know, you overnight become responsible for this beautiful little bundle. And, you know, so many of us have challenging births. I don't think bringing a child into this world can be anything other than challenging, though I hear some incredible stories. I'm like, wonderful. That was not my experience. Your hormones are all over the place. Your relationship dynamic changes so much. And I was just in shock. I wasn't expecting it to change me as much as it did. And as soon as that did happen, of course, I took the time to process. But as I came out of it, I just thought, you know, I need to talk about this more because I wish I'd kind of seen this conversation. It prepared me for some of the shell shock I was about to experience.
Yeah. And it's interesting because I remember, and I tell this story a lot around people like you or other women who have big followings and are very open about their ambition and how that's leading to this lifestyle of freedom and getting to live at the rhythm and the pace that you want. And I think witnessing people from the outside, like you become mothers, there's this veil that kind of gets lifted where you're like, is it really possible to live a life of freedom and have that rhythm and go at the pace you want in your business and still make the kind of money that you're used to making and be a new mom? And I think like from the outside, and that's where you and I connected, you know, was watching you become a mother. And I knew you had had a challenging birth. You were open about that, a C-section. And we started talking about that. And I remember one of the first like voice notes we sent back and forth was like, I'm questioning coming back to work. Not that I don't still love Boss Babe, not that I don't still want to serve ambitious women, but it just doesn't feel the same. And some of the things I was sharing on my Instagram, you were seeing, and you're like, this is exactly how I feel. And it was this idea of like, it's not that I'm not still ambitious. I just am ambitious in a different way, but I don't know what that means. And so can you speak a little bit to like, as you're coming out of your maternity leave and, you know, obviously you work from home and you're the CEO of the business, so you have a lot of power and control over your time, but you were experiencing that feeling of like, I feel different and I don't know what that means. How did you kind of wake up to that feeling and identify it? And then what did you do to address it as you started to come back into work?
Yeah, so I came back after the 3 months and it just wasn't great. My mental health was not in a great place, to be super transparent. I definitely struggled a lot with anxiety and depression in those early months. And I came back into work just really in the throes of things. Like I could barely get through a day without bursting into tears. Like if you said hello to me in the wrong way, I was crying my eyes out. I was still like, I was like cluster feeding constantly. Like my baby was 3 months old. Like she was still loving feeding as much as she possibly could. And you know, naps were kind of all over the place. My nanny was still in a place of onboarding. Like I was still wanting to be with my baby constantly. And so then I tried to just slot back in the same role I'd been in. And part of that was, you know, doing certain things in my role that weren't feeling aligned anymore. You know, running certain things in the business that weren't feeling aligned. So it's just a lot of things that I was doing before that I kind of beforehand was okay with doing because I had so much extra time. I'm like, okay, I'll get all of these things done that I don't love so that I can spend the time doing things I do love. I'll work evenings, I'll work weekends, I'll just have that extra energy in the tank, and I somehow made it work. And coming back, I realized it was like trying to fit into an old pair of jeans that were like my pre-pregnancy jeans. They were not going to fit. And so why keep pulling them and trying? And I decided the best thing I can do for myself, is take a step back. And so obviously that was gradual because the business was not in a place where it could survive without me. So it was gradual. I started to cut back on things that I was doing, which, to be completely transparent, had a really big effect on the business in terms of revenue and profit, especially. Team, it had a really big effect across the board. And I selfishly still had to do that for myself. Client experience didn't change, but everything internally did change. And it was hard because I didn't want my team to feel like I was letting them down. And I knew if I didn't take that time, there'd be no business because I would really have just had to walk away. So that was that. And I, gradually took my hours down, and I did step away again for a bit longer. And I was like, I just need to go and get my mental health back, my physical health back. I need to be feeling in a better place. And I also will say I feel really privileged that I had that option, because I had got my business to a point where that was an option for me. Financially, it was an option for me, but just also I built a team to that size, which I think was a blessing and a curse, because if I had plugged back into a business that was on the smaller side, I would have had a lot more control over things. But Boss Babe at that time, was already built into a machine. We had a huge team. We had have thousands of clients, lots of obligations, millions and millions of followers that we're creating content for on a consistent basis. So I was plugging back into a machine. And so I took that time away, and I think time really heals. It really does. Just giving yourself that grace of wait, you're only 3 months postpartum. Your night sweats still haven't stopped. Come on, give yourself a break. And as I stepped away, starting to realize what was and what wasn't serving me. Was there conversations that needed to be had that I'd been shying away from? Was there things that I was still taking on that ultimately should have been delegated a long time ago? Was I going along with certain decisions because I felt like there'd be a sunk cost if I changed my mind? And I think a big part of accepting things had changed was accepting I had changed, and therefore things were going to need to change around me for this to still to feel in congruence with me. And so it was a challenging period of having those conversations, making those decisions, making uncomfortable decisions that could be risky. But for me, it was ultimately the payoff is going to be worth it, because I'm going to be running a business that feels more aligned to me. It's interesting. We were just doing the CEO Mama Mastermind call before this. And one of my friends, Catherine, said something really interesting. She was like, the business is not you. The business is successful because of you. So you really can turn your hand to anything and you'll be successful. And I thought that was really, really interesting. She phrased it a lot better than I did, but was really interesting of I did have that belief of wait, I created this business once. I could go and create another business tomorrow and I know it would succeed. So let me make sure I'm making this business successful by having it pivot with me and having my role change and giving it the best chance it has of succeeding into its next chapter.
Yeah, I think that is such an important takeaway of this conversation, is exactly what you just said around I had built it, but I wasn't in the mindset that it could change in the way that I was changing, because I think so many of us come back into a successful business after having a baby and go, it is a machine. It is going to have to continue to operate in the way it was built. And I'm going to have to be the one that changes in order, I have to fit myself back into the mold. And it's interesting, a lot of the entrepreneurial moms, we actually are the ones who have the power to change it. And I'm curious around what is the belief that had to shift for you? Or, maybe this is on in real time right now, you're looking at this, but in realizing that it could shift, or in your case, you said, or we could create another thing that would be just as successful. And you did create, you created CEO Mama during that time, because I think part of your brain was going, there's something else here around motherhood of how do we take what we built in Boss Babe, which is all about empowering ambitious women to become more financially independent and to build lives of freedom. How do I take everything I know here and apply it for moms? Because there's so many people like you who have built successful businesses, come back in to that business and go, whoa, yikes. This I still love this business, but it doesn't fit the rhythm of my life now. So I think you were doing both at once, but I'm interested to know what felt scary to you, or what fears came up or doubts came up when you stepped back in and went, something has to change here. Did you immediately feel confident and powerful in making those changes? Or did it take some reckoning to go, this is a new version of me and these are going to be new conversations and a new path, but I really what Catherine said, like, I really believe in myself that I can change the path of the business, or I can go do something new in addition and feel like as successful, as ambitious, as empowered as old Natalie did, as new Natalie, who's now a mom.
I would say I had confidence in myself for sure, because I have been running the business for quite a long time. And, I feel like I could turn my hand to any business and most businesses, and be able to make it work. Like I just love business. I love entrepreneurship. So I did have that confidence in myself. But I think making decisions that impact revenue can be really scary. And I definitely had this concern that my team wouldn't have the confidence in me to follow this vision. And I was kind of worried, like, oh my God, is all my team going to quit because they don't want to go ahead with this new vision because they can't fully see that it's going to succeed. So just a grounded example was, we had this one funnel that had been running for a really long time, and it was really ready for a refresh. So I love webinar funnels, and every now and then you really need to refresh the webinars, the sequences, all those things. I was always the one in the company that was creating all of those things. The webinars were always coming from me, and I knew it was time to record a new one so that this funnel could keep scaling on ads, because we were seeing it was costing us more and more to acquire a customer. And it's like, okay, when that starts to happen, the funnel needs to change up. And I had a lot of resistance to creating a brand new webinar and re-recording it, because I was feeling out of alignment with that full sequence and that product. I felt like, you know what, if I'm going to be selling this, and I need to be fully all in with it, and there's things that I want to tweak, there's things that I want to change, there's different messaging angles, and I didn't feel like I was in a place to even put that in to copy yet, because I was still figuring it out. And so I actually turned off that ad funnel, which to a lot of people would be crazy, 6 figures in revenue a month. But let's be real, it costs you a lot of money to run those funnels too. So to an outsider, to probably team members, it looked crazy that I just turned that funnel off. But to me, I had faith that my focus was only getting clearer and clearer, and it was only getting more sharp on certain things, that I knew where we were going to take it. And I knew that turning off this funnel would actually mean we could all focus even more on one thing and make that work. But I just had a lot of fear that, oh my God, my team is going to quit. They're going to think like I'm making these crazy decisions. They don't get it. Or what if I do turn this funnel off and we can't recoup it somewhere else? Does that put us in a bad financial situation? All of that did come up, but ultimately I did trust in myself. And I've always reached out to invest in mentorship from people that have been there, done that. And that's a big thing that I did all throughout this process, was I was constantly, success leaves clues. Like, where are my clues? I'm always going to look for someone that I can pay money to help me avoid the mistakes that they made. I think it's such a life hack. So I did that too, and was able to gut check, hey, I know this might look crazy, the 6 figures a month, but I want to turn it off. I want to go somewhere else. And they'd challenge me, and they'd figure out, okay, that's actually, deep down, you feel like that's where you want to go. So how can you, mitigate the risk and make sure you're not putting jobs at risk and you're not putting your entire business at risk, but, what's the upside? Is it worth it? And it was to me.
Yeah. Well, and what I when I think of you in that conversation, because obviously I, have talked to you about this decision that you made and how it's unfolded, I feel like there's this deeper level of meaning that you were seeking in everything that you were now going to put out in any of the businesses, whether it was Boss Babe or the new ones, after becoming a mother. And not because what you were doing previously didn't have meaning, but because now you are also calculating all of those decisions and all your effort into building this business against taking time away from Noemi, taking time away from Steven. And also, I know, I want to get into how much you have built a life of freedom, and you privilege your white space. You need the creativity, and you've structured your life to preserve that. And if the business is a machine and it's just moving without you, and it's pulling you into things that you're not aligned with, it's definitely going to cut into that white space and into the freedom and the ease in your life, right? Because you've got the stress of all those things going on. So can you speak a little bit to coming back into Boss Babe and coming through that period of asking yourself all these questions of should I change things? Were you feeling this call to having everything you do have a deeper sense of meaning? And what does that mean to you now in moving forward with Boss Babe and also a CEO mama? And I know you have other things too, when you look at how you create in your life now as an entrepreneur and as someone who could go into any business and make it work, what are you looking for in what, not just like top line revenue and success, but in the meaning piece of all of it.
I love that you called that out because listen, let's just get really real. Why not? If I'd plugged back into Boss Babe and I'd built a machine, that machine was paying me very, very well, multi-million-dollar company. And as a founder, able to take millions home, directly from the business. It was very, very profitable and was in a place where we were paying out dividends at a very, very high rate. I could have kept doing that, but there was meaning missing for me, which again, I really acknowledge the privilege in saying that. I really acknowledge the privilege in that position. I worked to have the business in that place. It had been a long time getting the business to be a machine that really was running on automated funnels. I love funnels. I love marketing. I always have, always will. But there was a lot of meaning missing. And so, okay, going in and re-recording that funnel, it doesn't seem like a big deal to anyone else. But to me, it felt like I wasn't doing something that I really cared about. Like when you look at Maslow's hierarchy, as you move up, you're searching for more and more meaning. Is this fulfilling? Am I having the impact on the world that I want to be having? And there was certain things that I was thinking, I have a whole new level of empathy and understanding for a whole new subset of my audience that I didn't before. There's a lot of new mums coming to me to learn from me, to figure out how could I also create a business of freedom. And quite frankly, what I was teaching then wouldn't have applied to them because I didn't know what I didn't know. And I didn't feel in integrity going away and like putting out messaging that might make that new mum feel like I did understand and I was, creating curriculum around that because I was a mum, because I hadn't created that yet and I hadn't really figured that out for myself yet. So there was just a lot of things that just didn't feel incongruent and it didn't have that deeper level of meaning for me that I wanted it to. And for me, business has never been, well, not never. In the beginning, it was about collecting a paycheck because I had bills to pay. Then it was like, okay, my bills are paid. Now what? Okay, well, now I want to start being able to save up for a rainy day. Okay, now I've done that. Now what? Okay, now I want to be able to give back really generously to my family and my friends. Okay, now what? Now I want to give generously to causes that I care about. Like it's always leveled up. And it's not just been about, let me get a paycheck. It's what am I really doing that's contributing to this world in a positive way, whether that's in my family or beyond that. What am I doing that's making me feel fulfilled? So when I show up at work, I'm not leaving at the end of the day feeling so depleted and so down because I've been working on things that, quite frankly, I don't give an F about anymore. Is that the energy that I want to take to my baby, to my husband? Is that really the kind of thing that I want to trade time, precious time with my baby for? No, because I could just keep collecting a paycheck and step away from the business and be a full-time mum. I still wanted and searched for that meaning from my work because I am really ambitious and I love doing what I do. So I did have to figure out what that looked like, and everything felt like a trade-off. And so I just had to really dig into, what do I want to spend my time doing? Who do I want to really be serving? What kind of impact do I want to have on the world? And if it means I'm taking home less of a paycheck, who gives a shit? Like, that's okay to me. And I've really come to terms with that. And since I made that decision, I have been able to find the freedom that I had before. I have a schedule that really, really works for me now. I am working on the things that I love to do. I've really got back into a new rhythm, but it took getting super real with myself and saying, I'm going to turn this off, which is this ultimately turning my paycheck off. I'm going to do it and I'm going to make those tough decisions because something else matters a little bit more to me.
Yeah. Thank you for your candor. And I think it's such an important thing for people to hear, because it is exactly that perception exists when the successful woman comes back into the business and just picks right back up where she was after having a baby, where a lot of, like, if you are a mom too, you're like, what am I missing? Like, how is she doing it? And I think that's where, some of our culture is oriented towards like, well, now I'm just going to judge and shame her for not being a good mom, even though you don't really know what kind of systems or support she has behind the scenes. But a lot of it turns inward, and it's me shaming myself for being like, God, Natalie came back 3 months after and is like right back into Boss Babe, running this huge machine and just crushing it. But I'm like 3 months out, like barely functional. What is wrong with me? And I think you and I have talked a lot about this, where we know people and we have seen people and supported people where they gave up on their business, or they because they felt so inadequate in comparison to other people, they stopped pursuing their ambition. And people like you and I are like, no, no, like we will support you. Your ambition is just as important as your motherhood for your identity. So let's find a way to not only model it in a way that's truthful and honest in how we're really doing it, but also in building community around this idea that it's okay to step back into a business that's totally successful and generating a lot of money and blow it up to an extent because it no longer like matches with your alignment and your new identity. And I think that's the key to know about successful women who are stepping back into businesses it's really evident when they're prioritizing their alignment. And I think it's to your testimony, it's like your business actually might flourish even more, and you have to be willing to take that risk, and you have to believe in yourself and be confident in yourself to know, I built it once and I can do it again in a new way that's in alignment with me, and it will be just as great in a new way. The next thing I want to talk about is with you, especially, you're known for building systems and structures and like operating systems in businesses for sure. And that's absolutely what has led to Boss Babe's huge success. How are you now doing it with taking that like entrepreneurial brain and applying it into how you run your life so that you can do what you're talking about? Like you can come back into work, but still maintain the freedom-based lifestyle that is so important to you without it like bleeding over into time that you've blocked to be with your family.
Oh my God, there's so much I can say about this. Before I get into it too, I also just want to share, I get that this conversation for some people might just feel so out of touch. I really get that. Like to be able to have a business that generates money where you can spend time with your baby for almost, majority of women, that is the dream. And I really want to share that. I remember talking to my mum when I was really in the throes of it. And she was like, Natalie, I didn't have the option when I had my babies. She was like, what broke my heart was, and it makes me emotional talking about it, what broke my heart was I had to drop you all off at daycare, and I would get pictures texted to me saying they took their first step. And she was like, I missed all of that, and I was working a minimum wage job and it was never worth it, but I had to do it to put a roof over your heads, and I had to do it to put food on the table. And I think having those conversations with her, firstly, it showed me like, this is a really great problem to have. And I think also infused that level of meaning of like, I don't want women to have to go through that. I don't want women to have, and for some women, they're like, I love dropping my baby off at daycare so that I can go and do something that I feel really lit up by, and I pick them up at the end of the day and that's my time with them. I love that. And I don't ever want to judge or shame that. I think that's amazing. And what I really want is women to have the freedom to do what they want to do. And for some women, I want the freedom to have my baby at home with me. That's what would really light me up. And that's when we talk about meaning, that's what really lit a fire up my ass, is like, I want to figure that out for women so that I can help them do that. Because hearing my mum talk about that, I mean, I'm 31 now and I could still hear that pain in her voice of like getting pictures texted of your first steps. Like that's not what I ever wanted. And that was not what I felt like my choices were. And now I'm like, if I create anything, it has to speak to women on all levels so that hopefully I can give them some piece of advice that would help them be able to create that around their life and their desires. So I wanted to share that because I do know that these are great problems to have, and, still doesn't make it feel easy when you come back and your business doesn't fit you anymore. So in terms of systems, that's been huge for me because I run my entire life off systems, and I feel like if I don't, there's going to be balls dropping. So I've literally created my own like life operating system. It's something that I run my entire life off of, my personal life, my professional life, my marriage, like everything runs off of this operating system. And first part of it is there's a place for everything. So if someone's like, send me your ID card, send me this, send me that, it's like, okay, it's all in the operating system. Send me your TSA pre-number, it's in the operating system. Like firstly, the thing that I took away from worrying was like, where's this put? Where do I get this from? How am I going to find this? No, I'm going to put everything all in one place. That system's been incredible for me. And then second to that is having a rhythm of how my days weeks, months run. So I often do the same things. It's Thursday now. Thursday is a coaching day and a podcast day. Guess what we did? We coached, we're podcasting. Like that's the rhythm that I have on a Thursday. I have blowouts on certain days of the week so that I know, okay, if I normally shoot content on these days, I know I'm going to prep my content when I'm getting a blowout. That's happening on a weekly basis. I basically build my entire rhythms around that, which, by the way, I have a little product coming out soon that is going to support you all in plugging this into your life, which I'm super excited about. So that's been really, really helpful. And then communicating that with the people in my life that it's important to communicate with. So that's my husband, my nanny, my team at work. All of that's been really important to communicate and give them copies of rhythms and help them create rhythms for their tasks that they have going on. Even my nanny has a rhythm because her rhythm coincides with mine, because there's certain days that I'm not feeding Noemi as often and she knows what she's doing on those days. I created my rhythm, and then I think women generally run their houses anyway. I created my rhythm and then I started to roll that out across my home, my family, my team at work. And that's been really helpful for me. I have systems where if I have an idea, there's a place for that idea to go. When I have a to-do list, there's a very specific place that all of those to-dos are going to go. And you've seen it, like the way I batch and get those done. It's all running very efficiently for me. And it takes a lot of that load off, because that mental load is real.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say. I'm like, this is the anecdote without even realizing it. Like this is partially the antidote to the mother load, in the sense that to at least to like the day-to-day task oriented and getting stuff done aspect of it, where what makes it overwhelming for a lot of us is that it's only in our minds, right? Like that we're trying to remember it all and get it done. And you can take notes, you can write it down, lists get lost, right? Like many of us would benefit from having a system that is tuned to how our brains work, where it's like the second brain idea. Like you get it out, you know where it is. And then when you have time, you can come back and get it done. Or, if you need to come up with your passport number or something like that, you're not scrambling through a pile of stuff to find it while a kid is screaming and dinner's on the stove, and all the like memes and stories that we talk about in here around why this stuff feels so overwhelming in the moment. It's like you can organize it and take the time in one moment to organize it so that in a more chaotic moment down the road, it's easy to access. And I think part of the antidote to the motherload is figuring those kind of things out, however it looks in your life, to go, I've made as many systems as I can to try to make the load lighter, at least this surface level load of like the things that have to get done during the day. Of course, the next question is around the deeper stuff of the mental load, and how you, someone who has all these systems, and we've mentioned it, like privileged to have a lot of support and to have built life in the rhythm that you want, but it doesn't mean that you're without those deeper, heavier aspects of the mental load, right? And you've mentioned the relationship piece, and I know we've talked about how relationships shift, also money, like these like more taboo subjects. How are you, even with systems running and a big successful business where you do have, financial freedom and things like that, what still comes up for you in the deeper parts of the mother load, the mental load, the identity pieces around like things like relationship, money, investments, your own body, and like feeling like yourself and feeling embodied, how you look at the world now, and what you think about optimism with where we're headed, and some of these deeper topics that I think come up in the mother load that aren't just tasks you can check off a list.
Do you have another 10 hours so we can?
Yes, in fact, we will have more episodes.
I don't know how, like, is there a way to deal with all of this? I mean, I have a great couples therapist. I have my own personal therapist, and I have a coach. I have a lot of people that I talk to when I, want to get those things off my chest, and that helps, but it certainly doesn't eradicate it. I mean, every single, like I'm working and I hear my baby crying, I'm like up off my chair and like running to what happened, like is she okay? And it's like, oh, she just didn't want to eat her lunch. Okay, great. So like my heart rate's through the roof for no reason, and worrying about absolutely everything. Is the thing that we're feeding her the best? Is the way that we're bringing her up good psychologically? How am I messing her up? Learning what my new body looks like and getting comfortable with that. I'm like, oh my God, I've got a bachelorette coming up and I have to wear a bikini. Are you kidding me? Like there's just like so many different things. Finances change significantly when you have babies. My relationship, constantly thinking, am I giving any attention to my husband. Like, did I say hi to him today? Like, everything changes. Everything changes. I feel like that load is just an ongoing thing, but definitely having tools where we can be connecting with other people. I really index on my village locally, like the women around me that have babies of a similar age, really making sure I carve time out of my week to all get together where we can be really open and honest with each other, and almost every single week crying and getting things off of our chest. And I think, I don't know if you relate to this, but probably you do, but like having a baby really just cracks you open to the world. Like I'll be driving and see like, someone on the street and I just burst into tears, and it wouldn't have affected me in that way before, but it just cracks you open in all of the ways. And I don't know, I feel like I navigate through life as a very, very sensitive person these days. Like everything just hits on a whole new level, and you think about what kind of world are we bringing our babies into? What are they being exposed to? And you see everyone else as someone else's baby, and it's a very challenging
yeah,
it's a challenging mental load.
Yeah. I feel that way a lot, where I'm like, birth stories, like a stranger's birth story is like just immediate tears, right? Or like, yeah, seeing somebody struggling or any kind of injustice or unfairness. I'm just like, that's someone's baby. It's like, it's not that I'm even fighting for the adult human standing in front of me. I'm like fighting for the little inner child of that human who is some mother's baby who would like absolutely fight for that person if the mother was standing there. I'm like, and it's also this primal thing of, the village. Not all of us, you've built one around you, but like a lot of us don't have the proverbial village anymore. But I think we're still wired for that. And so when we see opportunities or we see things happening out in the world, we have this like longing to be in the village and like to feel the community around someone suffering or around an injustice or around like somebody who needs support. And I truly think that's like a mother's instinct. And for many of us, we don't have a lot of outlets for that anymore other than our own children, or maybe close friends. But because of the way we are in our lives where we're spread out, or we don't have a community of people with similarly aged kids, or we aren't, people like us, I know, and a lot of people that you and I are around, we're the people that have always gotten ourselves into like the ambitious rooms, right? Which are commonly filled with men or women who aren't mothers yet. And there's not a lot of rooms to walk into where it's a room of women who are all mothering young children and really ambitious. And we can say the things that we talk about and get a lot of head nods, And I know in my experience, I've been in a lot of masterminds or in rooms and communities and villages that had a lot of men in it. And when I would cry about being a mom, or I would express a lot of emotion about this mental load, I would just get blank stares, And like you mentioned, as you soften into really looking at the world as not only full of opportunity, because as entrepreneurs, of course, we see it that way, but also like deeply wounded, in a place where we want our children to be safe and to be happy. And we live in a world where there's a lot of things that threaten that. And so we're constantly weighing like, I want to go pursue all this opportunity. Like I want to grow these big businesses. And I also like desperately want to keep my little baby safe. Mm-hmm. And I think that mental load piece it's so huge as we talk about a lot, but I think it's important for us, people like us, to have the conversation about it so much, because it's not like any amount of money liberates you from that. There's no amount of money that will liberate you from feeling that way about the world and your own children in it. And when I first became a mother, I thought that maybe there was an amount of money that would do that. And I would look around at successful women who are mothers and be like, oh, there's definitely an amount of money where you're not worried anymore. And from what you're saying, like, no, there's really not, yeah, there's an amount of money that gets you more freedom and space and support in your life. But this mental load persists. And it's part of why you make changes in your business. It's part of why you privilege doing things differently in your life than your mother did. And it makes us emotional to talk about how we were mothered, because they didn't have the financial means to do it that way. So
yeah, I don't think that is an amount of money. And I also have a friend who, is also in a great financial position, and she decided she didn't want to hire a nanny because she was like, I would be really jealous of that person's job. And so actually my decision is that I'm going to step away from my business because that's the job I really want to be doing, is mothering. And that's great. That's really great. Like, I think those decisions are great. And I don't know if you feel this way too, but I think sometimes and I don't know how this statement will be received, but I sometimes wonder, has our primal brain caught up with our brain of today's world? Because I feel like mine hasn't. There's some days there's fires going on in the business and I'm just like, I don't give a shit. I just want to be with my baby. And, I think we live in a world where there's so many badges of honor for achievement and ambition. Where's the badges of honor for motherhood? And sometimes I question, am I doing what I'm doing because it's truly what lights me up, or am I doing it because that's what I think I need to do to be accepted in today's society? Like, would I still be relevant if I quit everything and became a full-time mom? Or is that looked down upon in society, which is crazy to me, because isn't it the most important job that anyone can do? Certainly not an easy job by any means. And I do think there's an element of, your primal brain hasn't caught up to it. And also, I also believe there's gender differences. I'm going to say that too. I believe there's big differences between the way most female brains work as it pertains to parenthood versus male brains. Not applicable to everyone. It's not a blanket statement, but I just know between me and my husband's very big differences. When he hears a little cry, he's not jumping out in the middle of a meeting to come make sure everything's good, but it feels like my body moves faster than my head can even think. And so I'm very grateful that you do what you do and are having this conversation, because I think it's very rare, but it's very, very needed. And women do need a place to be able to come and to hear real conversations and be heard and be like, wait, I'm not the only person in the world that feels that way.
Yeah. Well, and that you can feel both things at once, right? Like you can be involved in a important and intense business meeting, or be in flow in creating something for your business, excited about it and wanting that, and also hear the child in the other room and have that nagging little voice going, I should go check on her. And you can be doing both things at once. And that is what makes it so heavy, right? Because it's like, oh, I'm in flow. Like, I really want to get this done. This is amazing. I'm so excited about this, but I can hear her crying out there and I know she needs me. And you have to make that momentary decision of, I trust the nanny and she's probably fine. Or no, I'm just going to go check on her and I'll come back and I'll have to spend 30 minutes getting back into flow. And like, we make those decisions over and over and over every single day. And it doesn't mean that either way you make that choice is wrong in the moment, but it's raising the awareness that for many of us, we are constantly in that decision, and whether our kids are at home with a nanny or they're at daycare, and you can still be worried about them, thinking about them, right? Like feeling guilty about it, and also loving what you're creating in the moment and with your work. And that is why we have these conversations, because that, to me, when I had my first baby almost 6 years ago, I was the person who was back on Zoom a few weeks later, like nursing him below the camera on Zoom, trying to just pretend like I didn't just have a baby, and I would just have to mute when he would like fuss or cry, because no one on the camera knew that he was with me. And for some reason I thought like, oh, if they see him, they're not going to want to pay me because they're going to think I'm distracted. And it's like, well, I will give you a clue. I am going to be distracted for the whole rest of my life. Like, you're never going to be able to sit there and work again and not have that inkling of, is the baby okay right now? Is my 6-year-old okay right now? And it's interesting because it is, I think, a gender difference. Like RT says this all the time, where I work from home. He works at his building downtown. And so he has a commute. He has a transition between, work and parenting when he comes home. And he's like, as soon as I get in the car, I'm like in the transition into work mode. And I don't even think about the kids unless you like text me something about them that I need to think about during the day. And then like I get in the car at the end of the day and I come home, and like I usually like listen to a podcast or make a phone call. And like, I think about the kids when I pull into the driveway and I see them open the door to like greet me. And I'm like, huh? Wait, what? Like I can hear them playing in the room next to us while we're on a podcast. And I'm already like, I'm talking to you present, but I'm also thinking about like, what do we make for dinner tonight? Oh, it's raining. I can't play with them outside, And I think that is truly a biological difference, where no matter what your work situation is, once you become a mother, your brain is just doing both things at once all the time. And that's what I never saw people talking about. And that I think now people like us are talking about a lot more. And we have CEO Mama helping people normalize that. And it's like such a relief, a sigh of relief to be like, okay, it is normal to be on a podcast and also be thinking about what my kid is doing in the next room. And to me, I'm like, it's also pretty fucking amazing that we have the capacity as humans, as mothers, to do both of those things at the level of excellence that we do them. So,
I mean, mothers should run the world. A mother should be running for president, that's for sure.
right? If they didn't get like wildly shamed by half of the country for not being a good enough mother.
That is true. He was watching your baby while you're at work.
Exactly. Like, and this is, you're going to put all this publicity and like focus on young kids. Kids should just be kids. Like, okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. Another whole podcast.
I feel like we could podcast forever on these topics.
I know. Well, we should. We'll start doing more episodes. But speaking of that, I want to talk a little bit about CEO Mama, and like, because it was originally your idea, and it was born from everything we've talked about, where you kind of realized, hey, there's an opportunity here to take everything I built in Boss Babe and apply it to women like you. Like, I've built successful businesses and now I'm a mom and everything kind of feels a little weird. There's got to be other people like me who want to have these conversations. So can you talk a little bit about how CEO Mama came to be and then the vision for it moving forward?
I always feel nervous talking about it because I always get messages of women saying, hey, I want to join. I'm like, you can't right now. So I created this because I needed it. Quite frankly, I put a group of women together that were, I felt like in similar situations to me, were new mums or kids under 10, had successful businesses and didn't feel like there was a place for them where they could have these really open, honest conversations. One day we're talking about scaling up our businesses, crushing up podcasting. How are we delegating our social? And the next day we're talking about what kind of processes did you give your nanny? Do you have a playbook for that? How are you dealing with this? How often are you having sex? And you're like, what? Just very open, honest conversations in a place where we're not the coach, we're not the leader, we're actually the ones being able to receive support. We're not holding everything together. I felt like there was a real need for it. So it was born very organically. And I saw, okay, clearly there's a huge need for it. So we together have launched the second cohort, which has been amazing. We're not currently enrolling. I just want to put that out there. I wish we could just make this as big as, I know it gets to be, but right now that's just not possible. Boundaries, there's just only so much time in the day. And the magic of it is that it's small and intimate. So right now that is what it looks like. I mean, the vision is, I think, I hope you and I can figure out how to be able to bring more women into this, because we do a lot of in-person stuff. We do virtual stuff. It's every single call I leave with chills of like, this needed to exist in the world and we need to figure out how to bring more women into the fold. So the vision of it is that we get to do just that. I don't have this like, it's going to be this, this, and this. It's just, I just want to continue bringing more women in and supporting them and holding them through their identity shifts. We were just talking today of someone in ours whose baby's, a couple months old, and she's really in the throes of finding her identity and finding herself. And we were just saying, I'm so grateful that we get to be there for her, because we've been through that. Even, for me, I'm maybe a few months ahead, Lindsay, or a few years ahead. It's like, how amazing that we, alongside 20 other women, can really hold space for that identity shift and have her feel like what she's going through is so normal and that she's held and supported, and blowing her business up is not going to ruin her life. And it's probably the most rewarding thing I've ever done in business. And I hope we get to figure out how we can bring more women into it, really.
Yeah. I mean, I get chills too every time we get off a call, and like you and me always are texting back and forth. Like, that was so good. It was so amazing. Like, this, people need this, and like, obviously we have lots of ideas on how to grow it. And we always have to like throttle ourselves down and be like, whoa, can't do everything at once. But I mean, it is the room where, on today's call, we're talking about like social media and launching. And then the next person who goes is like, you know what? Like, I'm not sleeping and I don't know what else to talk about today other than I'm not sleeping and I don't know how to get sleep again. And I am so stressed out about not sleeping. Help me with sleep. And we're like, oh my God, yes. Like, we have a ton of resources. Like, I told her that in the other cohort, we talked about taking care of babies, and she's like, I'm going to go look it up right now, and it's like, that's the thing that I think when you look at a lot of ambitious women and the circles that we naturally are drawn to, it's like, we want to go into the business circle. Like, we want to go grow the business because we're wired to believe that more money or more influence or a bigger following or whatever is the solution to feeling overwhelmed. When in reality, it's like, no, it's having a place you can come. And on one call, you are asking about social media growth and launching. And the next one, you're like, I haven't slept in 2 weeks. Mm-hmm. And people are equally helpful in both conversations. And that, I think, is the magic of CEO Mama. And yeah, we'll see where it goes from here, but anybody listening can follow you and I, and you'll see where it's headed. But personally, I'm so grateful to be a part of it, and so grateful for your vision. in launching it, because I think it's one of those things that until it exists, you don't really realize how much you're missing it. And then you see it and you're like, these are conversations that need to happen. And, for me, it's like this, that's what a lot of what Motherload is about, is the conversation, but having a community around it and support to help you actually implement it is the next level of that. Right. And being around women who you can text or call or message at any time and be like, okay, I need support with this, like right now. I'm having this fight with my husband right now, or I'm having this issue with a team right now. And knowing that the community is there for you. It is the village that we've been missing, So more to come on CEO Mama. I'm sure you and I will do more podcasts about it as this and other things grow. But, in general, all of today's conversation has really been about exactly why Motherload and CEO Mama have come to exist, because there's a lot of people like us who we build successful things, and we become mothers and go, this isn't really it anymore. And it doesn't mean I don't love to work. I just don't know how to be in my work, in my new identity, in the work in the same way. And I think the takeaway from today's episode is you don't have to be. In fact, you're a shining example of having the ability to step in and go, you know what, I'm going to make it work for me. And I'm going to put myself first. I'm going to make sure that I'm in alignment, because if I'm in alignment, my relationship is better. My kids are better. My businesses are better, which I talk about all the time on Motherload. So last thing, I want to know, we see this on social media a lot, but what does a day in the life of Natalie look like? Like, how are you really managing the Motherload day to day? We've talked a little bit about it, but just walk us through like a day like today where you've got a lot going on, but you're at home. How much are you stepping out to work? Stepping out to see Noemi, stepping back into work, and how do you manage those transitions?
Let me just pull up my calendar. Let's just get into the details. Let me see. What am I doing like today? Okay, let's see. So today, my calls didn't start until 11:30. So my mornings, very much, we woke up at 5:30. I normally nurse Noemi in bed. I've enrolled my husband in making my breakfast while I'm doing that. So he goes out and makes breakfast for me and Noemi. We play in bed for a little bit. We go out, we have breakfast, and then we always go on a family walk. And it's just a really nice way to start the day. Come back home, go in her playroom, we're playing, and that takes us to 8:30. Her nanny arrives at 8:30. I normally then tag out, I go take a shower, I make my coffee, and I sit and read. I love starting my day reading. I'm saying starting my day, I start my morning routine really once my nanny tags in with Noemi. So I normally do all that, and I'll be reading. And I think I got to my laptop about 9:30 today, and I normally will just go and look at approvals and things. Is there anything urgent that I need to look at today? Is there anything I need to do to unblock people today? So I think I did that for about an hour. I stepped back, I nursed Noemi again, I made some food. She had her paddling pool set up outside, so I went outside and we were playing, and I took a good hour of doing that. Hopped on a coaching call, and then I had another coaching call after that. And then I had another break, so I went out and I was with Noemi again, and it was just very much breaking up my day. And then hopped on this podcast. So I feel like it's always just a flow in and out. And there's days where my days are super empty and I don't have any meetings. And I'll normally spend a lot more time either with Noemi or being really creative, just really whatever I want to do and what my business needs from me. Or I'll have days where there's a lot of meetings back to back and I'm not really popping out as much. I don't want to context switch, and I want to stay in flow. But today's been one of those days that's been very, very flowy for me. And I'll normally just nip out and see her and play and connect with Steven, because he has his meeting days the same as me and he has breaks around the same time as me. So just very flowy, to be honest. And it's coming up, it's 4:30 now. Once this podcast ends, I'm just going to call it a day. And normally what I will do is shower to bookend my work day. I'll normally shower and then I'll go see Noemi. I'll start prepping dinner while my nanny's still here. She's here till 5:30. So I get dinner already in the oven. And so then when I take over, I can just be really present with her. We'll have dinner together, wind down. And then I just when she goes to bed to just sit and I love the Beam hot chocolate. It's so good. And it's got a really great blend of melatonin and CBD and all the things. And I love to just sit, watch a little bit of TV or chat with Steven, have my hot chocolate. And then I'm in bed early, by 9 for sure.
Yes, because we have these early risers. That rhythm, it sounds amazing. And I think over more episodes and of course people should absolutely follow you to see how real you are about what it's taken to build that and how intentional you are about building it. Because that's not like that's just how it started or how it just happens, right? Like you are very, very intentional with the rhythms and the systems and your boundaries on having that level of freedom in your life. And it helps you operate at such a high level of success in the businesses. Well, we could keep talking, and we are going to do more episodes on Motherload. We'll talk more about CEO Mama. I'm sure it'll come up in Boss Babe more and more. These themes of how you build rhythm, how you build freedom, how you handle guilt in the motherload and all of that. So thank you again for your candor. I love you. And I'm so grateful to be a part of CEO Mama. And I appreciate your time today.
Thank you. This was so much fun. We need to do more of this. If you guys enjoy this and you want more of this, DM me or Lindsay and let us know, like, what do you want us to talk about? Because I feel like we need to do more on my podcast too. We just need to be having more of these conversations because we both get so real with each other. Just like I'm like, let's start recording this.
Yeah. Yeah.
So let us know, please.
We didn't even like get into like the real like nitty gritty stuff because there's so much we talk about, like, you know, and how often like sex comes up and money and all these other topics that are like, we can talk about these things. Like these are women who get it and are safe to talk about this stuff and who are normalizing that. Yeah, it's very real to have these things going on and to be in these questions. So yeah, send us your ideas. We love
Send us your ideas, questions. We'll do it. I promise.
Yay. All right. Well, thank you again. And thank you everybody for being here. And I will see you on a future episode.